Hello everybody and welcome to Ship-athon 2025. This year, we're doing something a little different we've never done before, which is stay at the Sulaks campground. It is on the St. Mary's River, right next to MCM Marine, I think that's what it's called. Also across the river, you see the Bush Plane Museum, along with some other place where we'll see a couple things go there later. Here we see the ship Kaministiquia, I think that's how you say it. Heading to somewhere, I'm not sure. It was originally built in 1983 and is 730 feet long by 75 feet wide. I think this ship has an interesting design. I'm not too sure if there's anything on the lakes that looks similar, but I guess some of the Algomas look like this. After this boat, there would be a deep fog that would set over the St. Mary's River. I'm not too sure why. As you can see, it was a little foggy here for this first ship. However, as you'll see here in a minute, for our next ship, it really started getting foggy. Another interesting note there is an otter, or a badger or something, came swimming by us. Unfortunately, it dived down, so we weren't able to see it fully. Anyway, on to the next ship. Here we see the Sugar Islander car ferry. Down the river is the Kaministiquia that we seen earlier. Sugar Islander ferry goes between Sault Ste. Marie and, well, Sugar Island. As you can see, the fog started picking up quite a bit here. However, it won't be only this. It would get much thicker the farther we go toward the night. After that, it wouldn't be long before you'd see our next ship. This is the Presque Isle, one of the most unique boats on the Great Lakes. It is a tug and barge, and not only that, is 1,000 feet long. The combined length of the tug and barge are 1,000 feet exactly. However, the barge part is 974 feet, and the tug is 153 feet. The ferry decided to come out one more time before Presque Isle came. The fog lifted just a little bit. However, as you'll see here in the next ship, it won't be the case. Honestly, think it looked cool seeing Presque Isle pop out of the fog and kind of push it aside. It's very interesting. One interesting note is the Presque Isles captain is very, very happy. I believe on this, in this instance of seeing it, we saw it twice. This instance, we got 3 horn salutes, I think? 3. It's either 2 or 3. I don't know if I caught one full one, but yeah, we got quite a bit. One interesting note also is that the James R. Barker, which is the very next ship, heard Presque Isle honking one of these times. Unfortunately, I did not get that on camera, but it was quite interesting. There's number 1 horn salute as the Sugar Islander ferry comes into the dock. Further stats about Presque Isle, it was originally built in 1973. Both the barge and the tug, and it is 104 feet 7 inches wide. I also think this is the second 1,000-footer built. I might be wrong about that, but yeah, otherwise very, very interesting ship. Pause the camera for a couple seconds and, well, horn salute again. This won't be the only one, or the last one, as he does it at least one more time. Might be wrong about that, but he did it quite a bit. You can also see, I believe he is using a bow thruster. There's a decent ripple coming off of it. However, that might just be the water coming around the bow. Now, one thing I must say before I forget is that many of these videos are chopped up. This video would be 5 hours long or more if I didn't cut any of it out. Here you can see Presque Isle's tug. You can see it just behind the self-unloader there. I don't exactly know why the self-unloader is made like that. It might be because of the tug or something. However, the Vanikenvort tugs, I don't think are like that. Now, one thing I noticed is that Presque Isle is kind of rusty, especially on the forwardmost area of the pilot house. I'm not sure if they're actively repainting it or what they're doing. You can also see that all 146 feet of the tug are actually more into the barge. That is, I guess, for maneuverability. And also, these are permanent or semi-permanently coupled together, meaning the tug could detach from the barge for maintenance stuff, I guess. that concludes this ship onto, well, a train. This train here is CN L544 -81 or L544-81. This is a rather interesting train because of what it carries in its route, going through rural northern Michigan. Today it was being led by a solo ES-44, which I thought was odd. However, I found out that I guess they changed how they build this train up at. You can see there in the siding is an SD60 number 5422. From what I figured out, they add that SD60, or as you'll see later, an SD40 or SD70 onto the head end to help the Gevo all the way to the Sioux yard here. And then they take the SD60 or whatever they decide to bring for the helper off here at the Sioux yard, and then they pick it up on the northbound or the rest of the southbound. As you'll see, they tie down here, as unfortunately 2326 ties down. Originally, they ran with one engine leading, one engine DPU from basically every single time I've seen, either being an ES-44 or a Gevo. Here we see our next ship, though, the James R. Barker, and surprisingly, even with the fog, we still got the Barker's salute, or, well, the shortened version. You can also see it really fogged up. Another thing I liked also is the absolutely awesome echo after blowing the horn. It started getting really foggy as he began around in the bend at Mission Point. Even denser. I don't know if I show it here, but you could hardly see the MCM Marine next door. Yeah. Can't really even see that little boat, which I'll talk about a little bit later, called the Ojibwe. The next morning, we would come down to find that there's a cruise ship parked there, the Victory No. 2, along with the Joseph L. Block coming out of the lock. The Joseph L. Block was built in 1976. It is 728 feet long, 78 feet wide. Also, since I forgot to do Barker's, he is 1,000 and 4 feet long, 105 wide, built in 1976. Anyway, back to Joseph L. Block. Very pretty ship, I think. One of my favorites, definitely. This will also not be the first time that we'll see this one. This will be the third it's been through in this week. However, we've only seen it twice, because one of them, it was pitch black out. So. A little while after Block, we would get our very next ship, this one being a 1,000-footer. This one is the Indiana Harbor. The Indiana Harbor was built in 1979. It is 1,000 feet long, 105 feet wide. And what is one of a few ships ordered by the American Steamship Company to this design. Also, an interesting note is on the side it says "Keep the Great Lakes Great" or something along those lines. The very next ship after the Indiana Harbor, after a long, long time later, is the Burns Harbor. Ojibwe is still there. You'll see Ojibwe a little bit later in the video, as mentioned before. Also, there's a Canadian Coast Guard boat way on the Canadian side, not sure what it's doing. The Burns Harbor is a very similar ship to the Indiana Harbor. It was built in 1980, however, and is 1,000 feet long, 105 feet wide as well. The very next ship we would see is the Victory II leaving its berth. The Victory II holds 202 people, give or take. It is 286 feet long, and it was built in 2001. I think this ship is a very old-looking ship. I'm not sure if Victory Cruise Line or whoever may have built it wanted it to be like that. But I think it looks older, like something you'd see on a wood ship. However, it is still looks modern because I think the paint scheme looks modern at least. Overall, I think it's a very nice ship to look at, and yeah. The very next day, we would see a tug and barge coming out of the marine place, Purvis, I believe is what it's called, and a cruise ship. However, this one won't be docking up at the Carbide dock, which is where the other one was at. 52. The cruise ship is the Pearl Mist, and this tugboat here is, I believe, the Wilfred M. Cohen. Wilfred M. Cohen was built in 1947 and is 102 feet long, 28 feet wide. For anybody who are wondering what that train horn was, I believe that is the L544 leaving Sioux Yard. Unfortunately, we won't see that, but yeah. As for the Pearl Mist, it was built in 2009. It's 325 feet long and 52 feet wide. So it is, I think, slightly bigger than the Victory 2. This one is more modern looking. This won't be the only cruise ship that we see. I believe we saw 5 total, which is quite a lot. Pearl Mist would really start slowing down, so I wouldn't stay out too much longer for this one. We'd come back later out front to see the Algoma Guardian. The Algoma Guardian is similar to the Kaministikoa, I believe. It looks similar, at least. The old Algoma Bear here needs a little attention. It's quite rusty. However, the Algoma Guardian is still sailing, which is pretty cool. Especially with the Algoma's new thing of scrapping everything old and building new Equinoxes. Algoma Guardian was built in 1987 and 729 feet long, 75 feet wide. Our very next ship here is going to be the Walter J. McCarthy Jr. Also very similar to the Burns Harbor and Indiana Harbor. There was a tour boat trying to get a salute out of the old Walter J. McCarthy Jr., and it worked. Walter J. McCarthy Jr., similar to its sister ships, is built in 1977, however, and is 1,000 feet long and 105 feet wide. We would head back down to Mission Point once again to see the largest ship on the Great Lakes, the Paul R. Chagurta. The Paul R. Chagurta is, as I said before, the largest ship on the Great Lakes and is 1,013 feet long. It is also, like most 1,000-footers, 105 feet wide. It was originally built in the year of 1981. We would get a horn salute from it, however, it is from the front horn, which in my opinion sounds a little bit wimpy. We would then head back toward the campground, and we'd see the John J. Boland. The John J. Boland was built in 1973, is 680 feet long and 78 feet wide. We would get a honk out of this one, and honestly I think the river class vessels like Boland have some of the nicest horns. They're kind of two-toned, not like Barker's, but still decent. After Boland, we would head over to the other end of the locks by West Pier. Well, by the train bridge. You would see the ship Federal Delta coming under the International Bridge and the International Train Bridge. Our goal here today was to catch a train, preferably the northbound. As we'll see here, the northbound actually is being led long hood forward by an interesting locomotive. As for the Federal Delta, it is a newer ship, I believe, compared to some of these. It was built in 2018, is 656 feet long, 77 feet wide, and is operated by FedNav Corporation out of, I'm not exactly sure. After waiting for a very long time, we would finally get to see the northbound. This northbound is being led tonight by an Dash 9, most likely, certainly to be rebuilt soon. As mentioned earlier, it was being led longhood forward, which it is. Now, if you remember from the last clip, there was an SD60 there. Today, there is an SD40-2W. That is the first time I've ever seen that locomotive type before. So, very, very interesting. They are coupling back up to a cut after setting out a couple Wisconsin Central gondolas, most likely for maintenance work. I'm not exactly sure where they're going because they weren't there the next day. And the SD40-2W ended up going back to Gladstone, which is where this train comes out of. This train here is the L543-81, running over, as mentioned earlier, formerly Sioux Line track. Formerly Wisconsin Central, after the Sioux Line. This Dash 9 was leading a decent cut of cars. There's some interesting cars in the mix tonight. the train cleared, we would go and look at that SD-40. I was surprised to see it was actually in the North America paint scheme. As mentioned before, I've never seen these. The very next ship would be the K.E. Barker. However, it don't really look like it's the K.E. Barker because it's, well, nighttime. We wouldn't get a whole lot of footage of this, however, there wasn't anything too interesting. Well, because it was nighttime. On to the next day. The very next day, we would see the ship Kathy McKeel, which would almost immediately after turning the camera on, give us a horn salute. Some stats on Kathy McKeel. It was built in 1998, originally a tanker. It is 472 feet long by 75 feet wide. Coming up the river, though, was a rather interesting ship. The 1,000-foot freighter Stuart J. Court, which is the very first 1,000-foot freighter built for the Great Lakes. It proudly displays the number 1 on the rear pilot house. Like many 1,000-footers, it is 1,000 feet long, 105 feet wide. As you can see on the aft pilot house there, you can see the number 1 on that. I believe that is the thing that uses or operates the shuttle booms. I'm not too sure though. The nice thing is that we got a dual horn salute from the old 1,000-footer, which we'll hear shortly. Not too long after the old court passed, we would get our very next ship, the Lee A. Jugurtha. As for the the Ship-athon was built in 1942 and is believed to be the second oldest ship on the Great Lakes to date. The Ship-athon is 826 feet long and 75 feet wide. It is a very odd-looking ship, but I think that's mainly because it was a former salty. It wouldn't be a visit to Mission Point without a salute from almost every ship. However, as you'll see later, that didn't always happen. But anyway, we would get a salute from the old Ship-athon. We would then head back to the campground where we would see this ship here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce its name, but it is a Dutch ship. It did salute, however, I'm not exactly sure if I caught that on video or not.
So is it?
While waiting for the next ship, we would see that there was a tanker that pulled in across the river, along with the state of Michigan ship. State of Michigan ship is a ship that is used by trainees, I think, just to get the gist of how the Great Lakes works. Anyways, interesting sight, and that's not the first time we'll see that ship. The very next ship we would see is the Algoma Harvester, an Equinox class vessel. The Algoma Harvester is 730 feet long, was built in 2014, and is 78 feet wide. Very next, tug and barge we would see is the Joyce L. Vanikenvort and the barge Great Lakes Trader. I must say, the Joyce Vanikenvort has a pretty interesting horn on it. You can also see next to it is the old Ojibwe, which I believe was built in 1942. As for the Joyce Elvin I convert into Great Lakes Trader, the tugboat is 135 feet long, 50 feet wide. The barge is 740 feet long and 78 feet wide. And together they make up 840 feet. After untying, the old Ojibwe is going to head back to the MCM Marine Dock as the Great Lakes Trader continues moving down the St. Mary's River. One interesting thing is that they do not need to stop. They don't need to stop the boats at all in order to load groceries and other supplies. That is what the Ojibwe's main purpose is to give supplies to the ships so they don't have to stop. Especially with these small tug and barges that they might not have a whole lot of room on board to store food and other groceries. We would head down to West Pier again, where we'll see the Blair McKeel. Blair McKeel was built in 2010, it's 459 feet long and 68 feet wide. It's a very interesting ship. I don't exactly know what those gray things are. I assume those are some sort of unloading systems. But, yeah, pretty interesting. We would head back down to the to Mission Point, where we'd see the CSL Saint Laurent. I believe the artwork on front of the pilot house there is a Canadian goose. Don't quote me on that though, but yeah. These old CSL ships have a ton of wear on them, especially we'll see later, from going through the seaways and salt water. As the St. Laurent sails away, we would see the Sugar Islander ferry head across. I honestly think this is some of the best lighting we've had most of the trip here. But rounding the corner is the John G. Munson. The John G. Munson was built in 1952 and is 768 feet long and 72 feet wide. It is one of the last self-unloader freighters on the Great Lakes to have a forward pilot house along with forward self-unloader. One interesting note about this ship is it has a very low horn. I honestly think some of these Great Lakes fleet freighters look honestly pretty good. I like the red, black, and gray stripe at the front. As the old Munson would sail away, we would get another ship leaving the locks. This one being the Blair McKeel, which we saw at West Pier earlier. Here we would see the Blair McKeel once again. This time we would get a salute out of him. We would also catch the local once again, this time being led by the Jivo that we saw earlier. Back the next day, we would see another cruise ship parked at the Union Carbide dock. This one being the Victory 1. The same ship, basically, as the Victory 2 that we saw earlier. The ship that we were waiting for is the 1,000-footer Edwin H. Gott. The Edwin H. Gott was built in 1979 and is 1,004 feet long and 105 feet wide. Hmm.
Arm's tired, right?
See the cruise ship over there? Well, you didn't. Oh, I was talking to you.
Don't look like there's anybody in that side of the phone. It's empty.
There'll be at least one guy, because he made it around the corner just fine. After the GOT, we would see the CSL Thunder Bay. A rather similar ship to what we've seen earlier. Thunder Bay was built in 2013. 739 feet long, 77 feet wide, along with most of the ships of the era. Our very next ship here would be the American Century. The American Century was built in 1981, is 1,000 feet long and 105 feet wide. The captain on the old American Century today was very horn happy. Here comes the main target of the day, the James R. Barker. As you can see, there are a ton of people here waiting for the James R. Barker's horn. Well, you'll see here in a minute what exactly everybody's waiting for. As said earlier, the James R. Barker was built in 1976, 1,004 feet long, 105 feet wide.
Yes.
Coming around the corner would be the state of Michigan. Mentioned before, the state of Michigan is a training ship slash probably research ship. Other than that, I don't know what it is.
Pretty good.
We would end up doing a couple things, and then we come back to see the American Spirit rounding the bend. The American Spirit is similar to the Barker, is 1,004 feet long, 105 feet wide, and has similar design. This also has a decent horn on it, too. Coming back the next day, we would see the Miami and the tug Victory. The pier is 628 feet long for the barge, and the tug is 125 feet long. We go down to Mission Point once again to see, well, the state of Michigan once again. Following behind the state of Michigan, we get the Manitoulin and the ship Presque Isle, which we've seen earlier. Here we have the Manitoulin, originally built in 1991 as a tanker for the saltwater market, and was converted in 2015 for use on the Great Lakes. It is 662 feet long and 77 feet wide. After Manitoulin rolled by, we would see the Presque Isle, the main prize of the day because of the captain. As mentioned earlier, the Presque Isle is actually two parts. A 900-foot long barge and a few hundred, almost 150-foot long tug. We went to go play games at the campground, and we would end up seeing the Misabi Miner. Misabi Miner is 1,004 feet long and 105 feet wide. The Misabi Miner was built in 1977. After the Misabi Miner would be a huge wait, and we would see the Atlantic Huron ship coming up the river. I've personally never seen this ship before, and I think it is kind of interesting, because I don't think there's another ship like it on the CSL fleet anymore. The Atlantic Huron was built in 1984. It is 736 feet long and 77 feet wide. This one, as you can see in the front, has some damage on it. I'm not exactly sure what from, but we can all assume it hit something that it shouldn't have. After the Anti-Huron Pass, the next thing to come is the state of Michigan once more. As it's getting darker, the last ship of the day, I believe, is the Paul Archigartha, 1,013 foot long, is the longest ship on the Great Lakes, as we've seen earlier. This time, he'd finally used the rear horn. After PRT cleared, we went up looking for a train, which, well, no luck. However, the locomotive they set off today was a SD-70. I believe that is an SD-75. Correct me if I'm wrong. Later that night, we would see the Viking Octantis. I believe that's how you say it. A very, very large cruise ship. And honestly, it looks kind of cool at night. The Viking Octantis was built in 2021 at 672 feet long and 78 feet wide, and is a foreign ship to the Great Lakes. Well, not foreign as in never shows up here, but is Norwegian flagged. We would see the sister ship to this one, the Viking Polaris, later. With all light fading away, we would see the Asian Spirit. This is an Asian flagged ship. I'm not exactly sure what country it's from, though. I believe it came to Duluth full of wind turbine blades. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what it was. If you're wondering what the ship looks like, here it is. It is blue with cream, yellow superstructure. Now on Engineer's Day, unfortunately, without going over the locks this year, we would see a federal ship. I'm not exactly sure which one this is. The Federal Cedar, I guess. We see the Viking Polaris, and coming out of locks is a ship I haven't seen really ever, which is the Robert S. Pearson. Robert S. Pearson is one of the river class vessels. Viking Polaris here is the same specs as the Octanus. However, it was built in 2022. As for the Federal Cedar, it was built in 2016, 656 feet long, 77 feet wide. As for the Robert S. Pearson, it was built in 1974, 630 feet long, and is 68 feet wide. They are a class of vessels, along with the Manitowoc and Calumet, along with the Algoma Compass. This class is a river class vessel. Well, made for rivers. There is a few more river class vessels of different design, like the Great Republic. While driving into town, I was able to snap this video of the Viking Polaris. Not the best video, but it's still decent enough where you can see the ship. After that, well, a long time after that, we see the American Mariner. This is similar to the John J. Boland. Well, is a sister ship to the John J. Boland. American Mariner was built in 1980, 730 feet long and 78 feet wide. It is also part of a different order of river-class vessels. Not exactly sure if these are the exact style, but yeah. After that, we would see the G3 Marquise. I believe that's how you say it because it is a French name. But anyway, it is a very early Equinox class vessel. Not exactly sure what it is exactly, if it's the first one or whatever.
Yep, sure do.
The G3 Marcus is 740 feet long, 78 feet wide, and built in 2014.
Yeah, you can fly it and see all the shots of it. Well worth the money. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, just a little hover on this one.
Almost as soon as G3 Marquis had left this area, a very, very dense fog set over the St. Mary's River. Coming up the channel there is the Liège Agertha, which we'll see again later. However, it wouldn't affect our next ship traffic though, because, well, it would clear out pretty fast. Here we got the Saginaw, which is also one of the last front self-unloader, front self-unloader, and front pilot house. So that's also interesting. Saginaw is built in 1953. It's 639 feet long and 72 feet wide. After a while, the Liège Agertha finally got through the locks, and we would come see it here on West Pier once again. Sitting at the pier also is the Joseph L. Block. He's waiting to get locked down as well. After eating at West Pier, we ended up going back home, well, to the campground, to see the Joseph L. Block once more. After a long break of ships, we would finally see something. Here we see the L553 taking its SD60 off. The SD60 here is a former Oakway leasing model, I believe. It also has a very, very good sounding P3 horn. After getting the SD60 into the yard with handbrake on, they would bring the 2326 up. Today they were setting out a dump car at the end of their train. And a dump car? Yeah, a side dump car. I didn't even know CN had these, and I didn't even know these were still used. But I guess they are. I don't exactly know where they're dumping it. The crew of this train, which we talked to briefly, didn't know where they were dumping it. But, yeah, it is full. They would run all the way down to the other end of the Sioux yard and pull out and connect onto the other cut of their train, which they had left here at the front. I don't know why they didn't just, I don't know, do a different way. Which I guess I don't really know if there is another way you really could do it. While that was happening, the CSL St. Laurent would head under the bridge. Shortly after that would go by, the CN L553 would come back and head over the bridge after it would drop. After that train and a long wait, we would finally see the Saint Laurent at the campground. I want to say right now, because the video is about done, thank you guys so much for watching. Even though we have one more ship, which is, well, another CSL. And the last and final ship today is the CSL Laurentian. I believe that's the way you say it. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was always fun to do, to head up to the Sioux and watch ships. Very interesting. And to see new ships sometimes, and ships you've seen 100 times. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching.